Let me tell you about Derek. Derek makes $52,000 a year. Normal job, normal apartment. Drives a 7-year-old Civic with a dent he keeps meaning to fix. Packs his lunch. Has a 401k. The guy literally comparison shops for groceries. Last spring, he financed a $22,000 Harley. His friends told him he was being an idiot. His mom called twice. His own bank account was basically screaming at him. He did it anyway. And look, Derek isn't dumb. That's the thing. In almost every other part of his life, he's genuinely careful with money. So what happened? What makes a responsible person sit down in a dealership, stare at a payment plan that clearly doesn't work, and sign anyway? That's what I actually want to talk about. Because Derek isn't some rare edge case. There are millions of directs. And the real reason people buy motorcycles they can't afford, it runs a lot deeper than just wanting a cool bike. Let's be honest about the math first because it's kind of wild. A $20,000 bike. Add financing, insurance, gear, maintenance. You're looking at $500, $600, sometimes $700 a month. For something you can't ride in rain. Can't ride through winter in half the country. Something that statistically puts your body in way more danger than just driving a car. Pure logic says walk away. Every time. And yet dealerships stay packed. Finance departments at Harley and Indian and BMW are processing paperwork on regular people every single weekend. Not wealthy people. Regular people. Making decisions that don't add up on paper, consistently, predictably, year after year. So something else is going on here. And once you actually see what it is, it reframes a lot of things. Here's where it starts. People don't buy products. They buy versions of themselves. When Derek sat on that Harley on the showroom floor, something shifted. And it had nothing to do with specs. Nothing to do with horsepower or payment schedules. He felt something. A version of himself he hadn't visited in a while. Someone who moves differently. Someone who does things. Someone with an edge that his Tuesday afternoon spreadsheet job had been quietly sanding down for years. Psychologists call this identity-based purchasing. And it is genuinely one of the most powerful forces in human decision-making. Way stronger than logic. Way stronger than a budget. Because here's the thing about motorcycles specifically, it's not like buying a couch. It's not like upgrading your TV. A motorcycle physically changes how you exist in the world, how strangers see you at a red light, how you feel in your own body when you're moving. The transformation feels real because in a lot of ways it actually is. And when you've spent years feeling invisible, when your routine has shrunk down to commute, screen, sleep, repeat, and you genuinely can't remember the last time you did something just because you wanted to, that transformation starts to feel worth a lot of money. Sometimes more than the math says it should be. And most people in that moment aren't doing math. There's something specific happening with men between roughly 28 and 45 that the motorcycle industry figured out a long time ago. That stretch of life is heavy in a very particular way. You're old enough that the wide-open feeling of your early 20s is gone. Paths have narrowed. Responsibilities are real. Freedom feels further than it used to. But you're young enough that you're not ready to just accept that. Accept that this is it. Psychologists call it identity renegotiation. That uncomfortable internal moment usually happens late at night, quietly, where someone starts asking whether the life they built is actually the life they wanted. Not a crisis necessarily, just a very human question. But it creates this specific hunger. And an expensive motorcycle speaks directly to that hunger in a way that's almost hard to explain until you've felt it. Because the bike says something, not just to other people, to yourself. It says you're not fully domesticated. You still have something going on. You haven't handed every interesting part of yourself over to the routine yet. People pay real money for that feeling. Every single weekend. All over this country. Now here's where it gets genuinely interesting. There's a concept in behavioral economics called future self-discounting. Basically, our brains are wired to care way less about our future selves than our present selves. Future you feels like a stranger. Vague. Abstract. Present you is immediate and real and wants something right now. So when Derek is sitting in that financing office, some part of him knows. Future Derek is going to feel these payments. Future Derek is going to have some genuinely hard months. But present Derek is the one holding the pen. And present Derek isn't thinking about any of that. He's thinking about Sunday mornings. Empty roads. The throttle. That feeling of going somewhere just because he can. Present Derek wins almost every time. This is why big emotional purchases happen faster than people expect them to. The longer you sit with a decision like this, the more your rational brain can catch up and intervene. Dealerships know this. Salespeople know this. The entire financing structure around motorcycles exists to keep you in that emotional window just long enough to sign. It's not accidental. None of it is accidental. There's something else I want to name because I don't hear people talk about it enough. The identity gap. Most people walk around with this quiet, persistent gap between who they actually are on a random Wednesday and who they feel like they're supposed to be, who they used to be, who they still think they could be if life had gone a little differently. That gap creates this low-level discomfort. Hard to name. Just this vague feeling that something got smaller. That somewhere along the way, life got narrower than you planned. A premium motorcycle closes that gap fast. Faster than almost anything else you can buy. Because you're not buying a vehicle. You're buying a signal. To yourself and to everyone else. I'm not just someone who sits in traffic staring at a phone. I ride. I do something real on weekends. I operate a machine that demands actual skill and full presence. And the wild part, that's not completely a story you're telling yourself. Riding actually delivers a lot of what that identity promises. The presence is real. The skill is real. The community is real. The problem is the payment is also real. Every single month. Whether the ride lived up to the image or not. Oh, and here's one that really doesn't get talked about enough. Belonging. Motorcycle culture, and I mean this genuinely, not as a pitch, is one of the most welcoming communities in America. When you buy a bike, especially a particular brand, you get immediate access to a tribe. Strangers nod at you on the road. Conversations happen at gas stations that would never happen otherwise. Group rides, rallies, people who actually show up. For someone who feels quietly isolated, and honestly a lot of Americans do, even when they're surrounded by people, that belonging is not a small thing. Research consistently links loneliness to impulsive, emotionally driven purchasing. When people feel disconnected, they reach for things that promise community. Things that say, here is where I belong, and here is who I am. A $20,000 motorcycle can feel like buying entry into something real, something physical, something that exists outside of a screen. For some people, that's genuinely worth the financial strain. And I don't think that's crazy. I think that's actually pretty human. Now here's the uncomfortable part. Sometimes they're right. Not financially right. The math still doesn't work. But psychologically, sometimes the purchase does exactly what the person needed it to do. Derek has been riding 8 months. He's tighter on money than he'd like. But he joined a riding group. He wakes up on Saturday with somewhere to actually be. He lost weight because he started caring about staying physically capable for riding. He's drinking less because he takes the responsibility of it seriously. So, financially irresponsible? Probably. Did something real change in his life? Also, yeah. Genuinely, yeah. And that's the uncomfortable truth here. Sometimes the emotional logic is right, even when the financial logic isn't. Sometimes people know what they need in a way that a spreadsheet just can't measure. The problem isn't that people make emotional purchases. The problem is that the entire system, the marketing, the financing, the showroom experience, is specifically engineered to exploit that emotional reasoning. And it doesn't care at all what happens to Derek when the payments get heavy and the savings are gone. Because manufacturers aren't neutral here. Not even close. They know exactly who their buyers are. They understand the identity hunger, the freedom symbolism. They know which years of a man's life he's most emotionally reachable. And they market directly into all of it. Premium motorcycle ads almost never lead with specs. Never open with reliability data or fuel economy numbers. They open with open roads, wind, big empty skies, the feeling of leaving everything behind you. They're not selling you a motorcycle. They're selling you a feeling, a version of your life that looks nothing like your current one. Then they offer you financing to make that version feel almost within reach. The dream gets big. The monthly number gets normalized. And people sign. One more thing. Anticipated regret. People don't just fear the consequences of doing something they shouldn't. They also deeply fear the pain of not doing something they wanted to. When someone's standing on that showroom floor, heart beating a little fast, nervous, their brain is running 2 simulations at once. 1, I buy this. It's tight for a while. 2, I walk away. I go back to my normal life. I watch other people ride on weekends. I think about this moment for years and wonder. For a lot of people, simulation 2 genuinely feels worse. The regret of the unlived thing is heavier than the difficulty of the real thing. That's not irrational. That's deeply human. It also happens to be exactly what the dealership needs you to feel while you're standing there. So what actually happens to people who buy bikes they can't quite afford? Honestly, it goes different ways. Some figure it out. Adjust, cut back, and the bike becomes a real source of joy that carries them through the tight months. A few years later, they'll tell you it was one of the best decisions they made. Some spiral. The payments stack against everything else. The financial stress starts poisoning the joy of riding. They sell at a loss and walk away with less money and a different kind of regret than the one they were trying to avoid. And some land somewhere in the middle. Bike sits in the garage more than it should. They still love it when they ride. Still not totally sure. What usually determines the outcome isn't really the financial decision itself. It's what the person was actually looking for when they made it. Buy a bike to reconnect with something real in yourself, and riding delivers. The purchase makes its own kind of sense even when the math never does. Buy a bike to outrun something you haven't dealt with, a relationship going quiet, a career going nowhere, a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. The bike won't fix that. The payments will just add weight to something that was already heavy. Derek texted his friend last month. Friend asked if he regretted the Harley. Derek sat with it for a second, then typed back. Financially, probably. But I feel like myself again. So not really. Financially, probably yes. Personally, maybe no. That tension right there. That's where almost every expensive motorcycle purchase actually lives. Not in stupidity, not in recklessness, just in people doing something deeply human, reaching for something that makes them feel real, in a life that's been quietly making them